Perfect. Thanks, Harlan. Sam, Brandon, great to meet you. Thanks for your time. Sorry, my camera isn't on. Tech
Of course.
has decided to not play nicely today, as it is wont to do when it's important. But thanks so much for your time. I was just taking a look at the Friday Harbor High School page. I love your about page here, Sam. I love the XKCD comic. Uh, big fan, big fan. And the whole. Did you write this whole blurb? Because
No, that was my that's it's satire piece from a long time ago about how just silly college applications have gotten, and our
yeah.
teacher pages are one of those things that a enthusiastic admin kind of tried to shove down everyone's neck. So in my passive aggressive East Coast style, I threw up something completely ridiculous that you are probably the fifth person to ever actually mention having read it.
No, I love it because I just thought I'd take a look, and as soon as I saw the SKCD, I was like, okay. And then I started reading it, and I'm like, all right, this is good. And so that's fun. Good for you. That's the way to do it. Malicious compliance, right? Um,
Exactly.
that's the goal. In any case, so yeah, we just want to talk about the Switch EV program. Like Carlin said, I just kind of sent over some general questions. We don't have to abide by them, just to get what we're just kind of looking to see is sort of what got you into the Switch in the first place. And I know you've upgraded to kind of the next or the newer version, and it sounds like it's been fairly helpful. And I've spoken to other schools and colleges about this. It seems like in a general sense, the kids seem to enjoy getting hands on with it and building something they can actually use. And it sounds like you guys are sort of taking it around to colleges and showing it off and stuff like that. So yeah, so what sort of was the impetus for the in the first place? Was just EVs are up and coming and this is the new thing, or what kind of led you to switch to start?
No, so it's funny. I came back, so I was a classroom teacher in Seattle for about 7 years, left the profession, went to work for a group that does deep sea ocean exploration, and then came back to the classroom in Friday Harbor. And when I showed up, I was just teaching bio, marine bio, but the school, the previous STEM director, had bought one of the first Switch iterations 12 years ago, I want to say, at least 12 years ago. And to his credit, this guy did this incredible thing. He built it with eighth graders. But the
Wow.
problem was, I shouldn't say problem, the kind of disappointing part was he built this thing and then moved on to the next flashy project. So we had this white switch, 72 volt DC, small electric motor sitting in the corner of our STEM building for a couple years. And when that teacher decided to leave the school, the principal approached me and said, "Hey, our CTE STEM teacher's going to go teach somewhere else. Would you be interested in teaching some STEM classes? Because with my time in industry, I had the hours required for a Washington State CTE teaching endorsement. And especially like I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with Friday Harbor. I'm literally on a small island off the coast of Washington State. It's an hour and a half ferry or a seaplane to get here. So for small rural schools like ours, we've got 220 at the whole high school. When a teacher leaves, like that institutional knowledge loss is massive. Like you don't get classes back if they go away. So I kind of said, yeah, sure, I'll take on some of these STEM classes, took over the STEM program, and was again mentioned was a bio teacher, so figured I needed to figure out how the heck to teach STEM. So went and got a teaching credential in CTE from Tufts Graduate School of Engineering, and was trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually build a sustainable program? The previous teacher, again, amazing human being, I love the guy to death, but his whole model really was these like flashy one-off things. So these eighth graders built this car, got a huge amount of public attention, and then it sat in a corner. And I thought it was a really, really cool project. Started looking into it. And it was funny because when I first started, like I'd go on the Switch website and you'd have that little bubble in the lower right pop up, like, ask our team a question. And so I'd ask a question. And then I get a phone call from Peter Oliver, who's the founder of it, because that's how small it was at the time, which was really cool for me because he was super helpful. So basically, started looking at that, started rebuilding the entire STEM program and our course offerings into something that was repeatable. And the biggest thing for us is in Washington State. So this is now my 20th year teaching. Washington State did this big move for CTE, which used to be called Tech Voc, where skill centers popped up. So basically, you get a bunch of districts who get together, build a skills center. Students do usually half their school day at the skills center, if not their full school day at the skills center. And you get your welding, you get your construction, you get your plumbing, you get your electrical, esthetician, culinary, like all these things, but they recognize that for those types of classes, it's hard for a single district to maintain the costs and the student numbers for single institutions. So the districts get together, you're now pulling students, like maybe you get 30% of your students taking CTE courses. Well, 30% from three districts, now you're at numbers that are actually financially responsible. We're never going to have that. Like we're island. So I was trying to find ways that I could find projects that expose students to lots of different things. So finally was able to go down to Oregon, I want to say 5 years ago now, and sit in on one of the switch trainings down at Clackamas Community College and see the new PM96 vehicle get built. Came back, ran a class for our vehicle because I looked at it from the opportunity of like it hits so many different aspects of career and technical education. I mean, you have, your automotive, but you also have computer science with software controllers. You have electrician basics in terms of wiring, voltage, all that kind of stuff. Series, parallel. So it was in my ability a great way to spread a bunch of different career pathways into one project that was manageable by one teacher. Um, so did that, started writing grants, and Washington State's really fortunate. OSPI has, really, really done a great job of supporting career and technical education. And for whatever reason, the grants that our tiny district has written have been really successful. So I wrote a $90,000 grant to OSPI and said, hey, we have this old program that we've been using. We'd really like to get the newer version, the 96-volt lithium iron phosphate, where San Juan County is actually the highest electric vehicle per capita in the state, maybe even in the country. I mean, you can't drive more than 30 miles without hitting the ocean if you try. So we're actually perfect for EVs because they're all you need to get around the island. But there's no EV servicing anywhere near here. So Tesla, Rivian, even some of your Chevy Bolts and stuff like that, you're either going to Seattle or Bellingham. So you're taking your car an hour and a half away in order to get basic servicing. So the argument we made to the state is, we really need more electric vehicle technicians. The skill set there also overlaps with things like HVAC, residential, commercial electricians, and the state agreed. So they gave us a $90,000 grant. So we got the new 96-volt lithium iron phosphate vehicle along with some of the relay kits. Last year, yeah, last year was our first year running the class. Took it apart this fall, ran it again this spring, and it was really cool because this spring we were actually able to get in touch with um, David down at Green River College. He's got two vehicles down there. Bellingham High School is another school in Washington. They had a vehicle as well, so we kind of set up this whole idea of a track day. And so we're hoping to do that again. I know Bellingham finally got their car up and running, so we're hoping that next year we can actually have the high school kids essentially competing. Wouldn't really be fair to have our students compete against the Green River College kids because that program's unreal. Like we walked in to their shop and there was someone doing a complete engine swap on a F-150, and then next to that was someone turning a Mazda RSX into an EV car. So like their students are legitimate industry professionals who are getting more certifications. So we're like, well, that wouldn't be fair to compete against high school students. But we still did drive around the track. And that was really fun. It was really cool for the students because I used it as a college visit as well. So that's basically the short version of how we wound up with the EV. We call it EV Principles class. And so we'll do it again next spring. I've got the white 72-volt DC and then the purple 96-volt AC versions sitting out back of STEM. Those are also half the reason I'm still going into my classroom in the summer. I learned my lesson the hard way. I had two student TAs who, while they're great human beings, did not do a great job taking the purple car apart. So we ran into a whole bunch of problems assembling with like, where are these bolts? Where are these wires? So I'm going to be the one to take apart the vehicles probably this fall myself and very carefully put everything into bags and organize it myself so we don't run into that problem again.
Yeah, that's putting it back together is only possible if you got all the parts,
Yeah.
which is sort of sort of a challenging thing. Okay, so now you do, so now you have both of them that you can sort of do, and so it's just sort of every spring is kind of the general, like it's once a year that you typically do this,
Yeah, so
or do you do
once
it
a
twice?
year for one semester, because we're so small, I teach 7 to 9 different classes every year, with some classes flip-flopping. So in a given year, I'll teach AP Bio, AP Chemistry, AP Computer Science Principles, AP Computer Science A, Human Anatomy and Physiology, Project Management in the Trades, 3D Design, Fabrication, Robotics, and EV Principles. So that was the other half of this is, you know, I'm not looking for really heavy lifts in terms of having to create all the class content and all the stuff myself. And this one's really nice because the platform's such that I can give a group a section of the assembly manual and they can go do it. So it's good from a keeping what little sanity I have left intact.
Yeah, I hear you. My wife's a high school teacher, so I'm familiar with the lack of sanity. Like I'm up in Canada, so our school year ends in about a week, a little less, a couple of days. We go to June and then start again in September. But I hear you. She teaches AP as well. It's AP like social economics, that sort of thing. Um,
Yep.
and it's I know it can be a lot. And like you say, having something, and I know I've spoken to other people of the Switch that it tends to be, it almost comes as like a almost, its own little sort of pre-built course. It's a process to get through this thing. And like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of related disciplines, HVAC and electricity, all those things that play into that. And that's a good point. I mean, if you're on an island, right? Anything where you have to take it for service, if you can have more local expertise, or these kids can obviously take that expertise off the island and find work inland, that's a huge benefit, right?
Yep.
How many kids in the high school? I think you said it was a 200 or so, or
Yeah, about 220 plus or minus year to year.
okay. Yeah, so it's certainly not. How many kids are in a typical class? Is it so 20, or how many are you teaching to put the car together?
So this year was a little bit crazy, and I probably will try not to do this again. I had 29 in my class this year for the EV. So we actually, that's why it was really good that I had that white car because I was able to break up into not only two separate builds, but then with each build, smaller groups there. So I had about 3 or 4 students. And then the other thing I did this year that actually what better than my wildest dreams. As I had a couple students who, no fault of their own, wound up in the class. It's what fit in their schedule. Weren't really interested in the vehicle per se, but a couple of them were pretty interested in social media. So actually, I had a social media group this year who we have a DJI drone and stuff like that. And so they did an amazing job of putting together little social media things that I could throw up on Instagram, which was actually really, really cool. And they did a great job with that. So that was one of the things that was accidental, but I'll absolutely keep as part of the class for here on out.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes it's those peripheral things that can make a huge difference. Just because it's a way to get the word out there, get the exposure. Now you mentioned the sort of track competition that you're gonna have. I mean, what are we talking like in terms of top speed for this thing put together? Is it 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour? What are we?
I mean, as long as Brandon doesn't tell my insurance company.
Right.
You're good. You're good. You can go ahead.
Everybody just
We've easily hit 70 in our vehicle, and I
woo.
don't think we were really even. I mean, we could have gone faster. Like, I think on paper it's about 100 miles an hour on paper, and I think we could pretty easily hit 100 miles an hour.
Wow. See, that's impressive. And I mean, and I think that speaks to the sort of the evolution of, I mean, between the the original one you
Oh
had, the
yeah. The
96 volt,
original
right?
one, maybe 25, 26 miles an hour
Yeah.
downhill. And yeah, also just to kind of put it in perspective, when we did the track event down at Green River, David, the instructor, and I, we had the cars set to 30% max power, and they were still they were sometimes they were drifting into turns pretty well, and the students had a blast. So at 30% power, these things will rip.
Yeah, which is again, and I think that is, telling the fact like the battery technology, the powertrains, all those things have advanced so much. Um, and I know you mentioned earlier, like when you initially started, you were sort of messaging the company, and they got back to you really quickly because they were so small. Do you find that still like that support is still there now? I guess however many years, 10 years later, is it still easy to get a
Oh
hold
yeah,
of someone if you
absolutely.
need something?
I mean, I basically I call and I'm directed to, someone in their tech support pretty instantly. I don't think I've gone more than a few hours without getting an answer to a question. And I'm sure that my phone number pops up with like a big red flag next to it at this point because I call a lot.
Yeah, but I think that's important, right? Because part of it is that the tech itself, but then the questions about it. I mean, it's how you learn, it's how the kids learn.
Hmm.
Um, it's all that kind of stuff. And I know in speaking with other teachers, just that hands-on um part of it, and especially building something that just it's one thing to build something it could work if, but this thing really does work and drifts around
Oh yeah.
corners and does, you know what I mean? Um,
And I've taken it to a bunch of conferences around Washington State, and that's always the interesting thing is, most teachers kind of look at it, and I think a lot of them are intimidated. And so I've tried to explain to them, like, again, I am a bio teacher by training. I am not a engineer. I'm not an automotive guy. I'm not a car junkie. Like, this has yeah, there's a learning curve, but it's not as steep as I think a lot of people believe. Like, I was just trying to read out of a manual, and I was able to get the white car working before getting down to Clackamas College for that workshop. We still were able to build that original white car and get it working with me and a couple of the other high school students I had, where we were doing it more as an independent study for them in those early years. So it's really not as intimidating as I think a lot of people make it out to be. And the other thing, too, for me that was awesome, we ran into some difficulty with the brakes at first. And again, not an automotive guy, no experience there. So I reached out to our county auto pool and got one of the county guys who does all the fleet maintenance. And again, I say all the fleet maintenance. We're talking like 3 trucks here, but still, all he does all day long is the fleet maintenance for the vehicles. And he actually came over to the high school and he was there for about 3 or 4 days and walked the students through the entire like bleeding the brakes, making sure they were good, what to check for. And because that's all he does, he was able to do it much cleaner. But it was a great excuse for me to bring someone in from the professional side of it and actually show the students and get them some face time with someone who does it for a living.
Yeah, and I mean, go to the experts, right? As you say, your expertise is in biology, obviously marine biology. Um, but if you can bring in someone who, and then it's that 601 kind of thing, you're able to learn, put it together yourself. That the documentation is such that you and the kids can figure it out. But in certain
Oh yeah.
situations, yeah, you get the right people to do the job, which opens up another avenue, right? And that's the goal. Um, and so, is there another one on the horizon, Brandon? Is there a 128 volt coming, or what's the?
No, we believe that getting to the 300 volt, 400 volt, 800 volt architecture is just something that students will. It's a jumping off point for them. That's what we've always wanted to be. Is we want to get students excited about new things, open the doors for multiple disciplines, like Sam said. So we're looking to actually fill out everything below the vehicle and expand on the vehicle, like ADOS and VCUs and ECUs, so that students can get more of the programming and CS side of how vehicles run and work, because all vehicles nowadays are driving computers. And so that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly true of the vehicles that I own. I'm old enough to remember the vehicles with no air conditioning and like
Hand
just
crank windows.
hand crank
Yeah.
windows. Um, that was my parents' station wagon kind of thing in my first Dodge Caravan. And now, yeah, I mean, there's I've had friends with trucks that you have a fault and that fault causes like the whole thing to shut down. Like it's not even it can be very problematic. So they are computers on wheels for sure, whether you're talking about a hybrid or you're talking about a gas powered car or you're talking about an electric vehicle. And so all of that knowledge is going to serve them well. So yeah, it makes sense. Build up the car kind of not the speed is not fun as it is. The speed is perhaps not the priority.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Sam, I have a question. What was your first impression with the DC-72 with that small group of high schoolers with independent study?
Um, First impression, how so?
Or like how like then the experience where the students really engaged with it, like the first
Oh yeah,
time you were walking
it was
into it.
awesome. Yeah, because basically, it was I had three students who really great students, but literally like had nothing to do. Like they'd taken all the classes they could take. They had a hole in their schedule, and so they came to me and they're like, "Hey, we like STEM. Do you have anything for us to do?" And I was like, "Well, funny you should ask. Say hello to this white vehicle that I have no idea what to do with." Um, Printed out the manual for them. They got to building because the middle schoolers, my understanding was, and I never got like the full story here. They got it built. It would drive, but it had a whole bunch of issues. Um, and then all of a sudden stopped working. I don't know if I've told you this story before, Brandon, but basically, what I figured out was the big red button, one of the wires was in but not actually seated, and that was the issue. So I let the students, they tore this thing apart. Like they were trying to figure out the issue. They were testing continuity, testing voltage for literally weeks. And again, it's one of my favorite examples of the other part of this that I love is like, they tore this entire vehicle apart only to find out or I figured it out, but let them because I was looking at it one day after school because I felt so bad. Like these kids have been working so hard and the vehicle wouldn't turn on. And this might be a slight exaggeration, but the way I remember is I think like I stood up and like hit the frame in frustration and that wire just fell out. And I was like, that's not supposed to happen. So was able to guide them a little bit more on that. But yeah, so it was great for them and like, they none of them were really that interested in cars or EVs really, but they just liked working hands-on with stuff and they got it working and it was awesome. And again, speaking to that, like the community attention piece, they started asking questions because they got it together and running fairly quickly. So they started asking questions like, "Oh, it's electric. Is there anything we could do like for solar with this?" And they happened to reach out to a local solar installer who gave them two of those flexible solar panels that would, bend around the frame. So they started looking at, okay, well, is there any value in actually putting this on the vehicle? And they figured out pretty quickly that, like, especially where we are solar panels aren't going to help you very much. Like you're not charging your vehicle with solar. So, and again, it was cool because the second they got it driving, they were able to drive it around. And that was where, that's why I had 29 kids in the class this year is every year that vehicle gets pulled out of the shop onto the street, students notice and students are like, wait, how do I get to do that class? And the community members too. I've got a photo of the white vehicle parked next to the Tesla Roadster serial number 002 because the founder of Tesla lives up here on San Juan Island, weirdly. And there was a car show, so he parked his. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to park mine right next to it. It's basically the same thing.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
All right. My next question for you. Sorry, Doug.
No, go
What
ahead.
drove the second decision to jump up to the pin 96 volt after just starting with the DC-72? What was kind of your
It,
mindset there?
it was the Clackamas thing. So going down there and seeing that vehicle put together and like, especially the lithium iron phosphate and the motor controller and the programming side of it, the Orion BMS, I realized that there was a whole order of magnitude more area that we could pull into this project with the PM96 versus the 72-volt one. And especially just because I knew about the OSPI grants and we'd been talking with my CTE director about some grant writing. Um, I knew the idea was at least there. And so I was like, you know what, not one for patience. I was like, let's just jump on it. I honestly figured like they wouldn't. fund it right away, and we'd have to go shop around elsewhere. But yeah, they got back and they just said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I'm like, "Oh crap, now I actually need to do it."
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
sometimes that's what happens, right? And I mean, it is. It's because it provides that ability for them to build it and that satisfaction to build it. It's like when you finally finish the IKEA furniture. It's very satisfying. Uh, sometimes it involves some frustration, but um, and I think it's the same thing here. Like, so they didn't have an interest in cars, but it wasn't about the car itself, right? Or for yourself, like you have an interest in general in science and STEM, but it was able to sort of give you something. So it's kind of that idea that anyone can do with that accessibility. Um, and again, in the community, something like that, that would certainly draw my attention. If I was at a car show, I would probably pay more attention to that than the Tesla, just because what is that thing? How fast can you go in that thing? Can you drift that thing around corners? Yes, yes, you can. And I think that's great. But
I definitely got a little bit of attention from the sheriff at first because I didn't
right,
have it licensed by the DOT initially. So
yeah,
there were a couple conversations with the sheriff where he's like, "You can't have that on the road," and I'm like, "Come on, Ron, come on, you're not going to pull me over. I've seen other
listen,
cars
Ron.
on this island. Like, there's some of the trucks that they let drive around. I'm like, this thing's way safer than those." But we were able. I took it down, got it licensed with the DOT, which was another fun one when the state trooper walked out in the inspection bay and I opened up the back of a U-Haul with this thing inside of
With
it, and
this
they were
thing,
just kind of like,
yeah.
okay. But they gave me a VIN, and I've got a exempt license plate on it now,
Oh,
so
sweet.
no one can say anything when I do 60 miles an hour down the
Yeah,
center road on the island.
yeah. You could have had a very Smokey and the Bandit moment there. Catch me now, Ron. And you could have just pinned it. But no, and I think that's again, that's going to always draw attention and interest, and then obviously, for the school itself, it's been beneficial, especially like you talk about given where, even the mention of the solar panels, like where I can see right there in Washington State, solar's not you're going to be your best bet, right? And even learning that, what technologies are applicable in what circumstances, that kind of thing.
Oh
So
yeah. And we also face a thing where, especially in today's day and age, and I think it's gotten a little better, but for about 2 or 3 years there, the idea of school levies and, putting the word taxes on it was a little bit scary. There's a lot of schools in Washington, and I'm sure other states have it worse, where school levies were failing because people were looking at the money being spent and not seeing where it was going. So, especially because I have, and again, the building predates me, but I teach in this building that has STEM right on the side of it. It was specially built about 15 years ago with a grant from the state. And so I've always kind of felt a little bit of pressure to have community awareness of what we're doing and let them be able to see, oh, like this is where my tax dollars are going. These are the cool things that my students can do. And I've said this to other people, like when I go to conferences, and it's always fun when you're in a room and they're doing like, oh, introduce yourself, where you teach, and the classes you teach. And I start rattling off the classes I teach. Most other people in the room start looking at me a little funny.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's never a bad thing when people look at you funny. At least you're interesting, right? Um, but I know we're coming up on time. But thanks, Sam. I really appreciate it, Brandon. Thanks for your time. I think we've got a lot of good stuff here, and it'll be able to
Can
make
I
a
can I ask one
good
more
piece.
question? Don't leave. Don't leave.
Hit it.
What would you tell an administrator who's unsure about investing in this large of a capstone?
I think from the administration side of it, I don't think you're going to find anything in today's educational landscape that is as diverse and flexible as that platform. Like there's so many different classes, and I think you've seen it, Brandon, looking at across the country what classes are teaching, and we've had this conversation before too. It's not just the automotive teachers that can have success with this. Bellingham was a STEM guy. Paul's a STEM guy. You've got AP physics and physics teachers out in Ohio. So I think that's one area that, if as from an administrator perspective, I would be really excited because, again, I mentioned that institutional loss, where as an administrator, oh my God, what happens if the teacher who's doing this $90,000 project leaves my school district? I can't think of too many other things that could pretty easily be adapted to another class. Entrepreneurship, CTE, business. I mean, there's not too many classes I don't think you could plug this into and have pretty amazing success from a teaching and student perspective. And again, like this year, I joke a lot. I I don't know if lovingly is the right word, maybe sarcastically a little bit, had a group of good old boys in my class. Like these are the guys who are rolling coal in their pickup trucks with the US flag hanging off the back of the truck, um, which for a small little island gets interesting reactions. But all that to say, you know, these are the kids who, if you mention EV, they're going to spit on the ground and talk about how, diesel is the way to go. But even with them, giving them the opportunity to turn a wrench, giving them the opportunity to actually like learn about it and get interested in it. I had at least half that crew of boys who were actually getting really excited about EV technology. One of them stumbled onto, of course, my brain's in summer mode. The Scout, the EV truck where it's going to have the built-in range extending generator. So they're, still got some gasoline, but it's, a truck's truck and it looks like it can tow and all this other stuff. So they got all excited about that. And they were turning wrenches in a high school class. And that was what they needed to be engaged and involved. Like these are kids, and one of them especially was failing every single one of his classes except this class. Like would not go to his other classes, but because he got to turn a wrench and do an alignment and go fast, he would show up for my class. So there are students, I think, where this can capture their interest when nothing else will.
That's awesome to hear. That's really cool, Sam.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Like you say, you don't know what you don't know. So for them, it's diesel, it's this is that. But when you actually get them physically hands on, that's when the learning happens, kind of thing. And that's what you want. So okay, well, perfect. Thank you, gentlemen, both for your time.
Thank you
I
so
think
much,
we're
Sam.
in a good place. Yeah,
Yeah,
really appreciate it, Sam. So
happy to.
all right, thanks everyone, and we'll talk to you
Well,
later.
we'll touch a base, Sam. You'll see it before it's
All right.
out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure I'll bug you sooner than later,
Yes, yeah,
Brandon.
you'll probably bug me before. Yep. All right, you have a good one,
All
guys.
right, see you guys.
Bye, guys.